Over to you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you so much, folks, for joining. You're very welcome to week 2 of our webinar series, where we're going to focus on global solidarity today. I'm going to hand you over in a second to Halima, who's going to take us through today's session with our wonderful panelists. But I just wanted to briefly introduce Halima so we know her background and who she is before kicking off. So Halima is a psychology graduate who's passionate about advocating youth-led change across Africa and beyond. She currently works as a property consultant in real estate and serves as the coordinator of Project Circle or Positive Circles Under 25, a community for women by women rooted in mental health, mentorship, financial literacy, and personal development for young women. She's also one of our Next Generation Leaders alumni and is currently one of the program coordinators with Panari and the For Youth by Youth movement, where she supports myself and others in youth-driven initiatives that amplify social impact and sustainable development. She brings experience in peer mental health advocacy and youth empowerment, and at the core of her work is a belief in creating spaces where young people are not only heard, but also equipped to lead boldly and shape their futures with purpose. So with that being said, I'm delighted to hand over to Halima to facilitate week 2 Global Solidarity.
Thank you very much, Cameron, for that really warm introduction. My name is Halima. I'll be facilitating week 2 of our full webinar series on global solidarity. Without much ado, I'd like to share my screen. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us from all corners of the world. Today, we're going to talk about global solidarity in many of its different aspects. I'm going to start us off with thinking and reflecting deeply on what is global solidarity. Global solidarity is the commitment to mutual support, shared responsibility, and collective action across borders to address global challenges rooted in respect, equity, and a deep understanding of our interconnectedness. Think of a global scenario where everybody is committed to the same cause, everybody is connected, and everybody is rooting for the same cause. This is global solidarity. And what does it look like? Global solidarity may look like sharing resources, knowledge, strategies. Ideas across the world come up each day. Young people have ideas, have innovative solutions, and global solidarity looks like sharing of this database of knowledge. And it also looks like collective action across borders. This is looking at a global challenge, looking at it across borders through different lenses in order to find a working method that we can borrow from one another and use to impact in our local, in our communities. Global solidarity may also look like building long-term reciprocal relationships. This means fostering our cross-border connections, sharing things in common, sharing the same values, the same visions, and aligning our priorities so that we create a more peaceful globe. And also it looks like amplifying marginalized voices, ensuring that we all have the affirmative action of ensuring that everybody gets a voice. Why does global solidarity matter? In my attempt to help us set the pace for this call, I hope that we can all acknowledge that our challenges are connected. So our solutions must be connected too. We face the same problems across borders. What I face as Halima in Kenya might be the same thing that Cameron is facing in Ireland, that Haruna is facing in Uganda, that Kila is facing in Mexico. So from climate justice to gender equity, no one community has all the answers, but collectively we can come together, learn, build, and act. Thinking about solidarity, what factors can make solidarity stronger? What factors can make us more connected? One is accessibility. When we think about accessibility, the first factors that come into mind are language. Are we communicated a message that reaches everybody? digital access. Does everybody have the same kind of access to digital forms of sharing and disseminating information? Financial support. Do we give youth and community-based organizations enough support for us to feel that we are in unison with them? Relationship building. Relationships are a key core value of solidarity. Trust, vulnerability, and consistent communication all are the building blocks of building relationships and solidarity. Local knowledge. You can't really appreciate unity across borders without appreciating the local grassroots wisdom. Looking back into our interactions in for youth by youth movements, leading up to for youth by youth movements, we worked on a conference whereby we were looking at innovations in gender equity. And one of the things that was shining through was local grassroots wisdom of indigenous women and that plays in climate justice and sustainable solutions. Last, have shared values. Across borders, we look at the same values in the same way. Justice, inclusion, sustainability. We have the same kind of vision when it comes to achieving these. What's the center? Global solidarity. Youth are at the center, at the core of global solidarity. Youth-led movements are now more connected than ever, not like it was 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. The kind of youth that we have in today's world are youth cooperating for a mission and leading the charge. They are now experts of their own text, narrating their own stories, and they deserve a seat and making seats and are making it at the decision-making table. Today, we are going to look deeply on how we can build youth-led global movements through solidarity. Global solidarity is all about power sharing. It's all about knowledge sharing, showing up for each other in terms of joy and grief. We are now currently facing an era whereby youth across different countries are battling with multifaceted issues. We need to come together and be united. We need to learn with one another, about one another, and build movements across regions and not work in silos. We need to share tools and not just take notes, but we need to actually look at how we can bring up a global movement of youth. Youth solidarity is very powerful, and the main reason is we are often the first responders to injustice in communities. Solidarity is the only thing that will connect us beyond cause or country. It will strengthen our capacity to lead change together. Now I reach to the story of For Youth by Youth. For Youth by Youth is a movement that aims to create this form of global solidarity that will highlight, that will bring a key focus on conscious leadership. And you may ask, how is this movement of young people across universities, across the globe, how are they going to achieve youth-led global solidarity? One, the For Youth by Youth movement organizing this webinar series is youth-led. This webinar series, for instance, is youth-led. Every decision is made in For Youth by Youth movement is youth-led. We are chartering our own path. We are asking the right questions. Another practice that we are bringing on is spaces for multilingual cross-ability participation. Again, bringing us back to this webinar series. We do have Spanish language interpretation. We do have American Sign Language interpretation services available. These are small efforts aimed to allow for cross-ability participation and multilingual participation so that our message, again, reaches everybody and is accessible. Another practice is we're centering represented voices while choosing the cohorts. A key factors that are being looked at are underrepresented voices, marginalized voices, young women, gender non-conforming youth, displaced youth and refugees. And this is at the core of fostering global solidarity so that we are all in harmony, we're all together, we're all part of the table, we are all involved. Lastly, global support and cross-sector collaboration. FYBY Youth movement involves universities, community, and stakeholders, and it sees change as something that cuts across horizontally and not in form hierarchy. So it brings all the act together in order to share this narrative. Should we take from this webinar today? What happens next after this webinar? One, let us think about how we can take what we hear today and bring it home. Please think about and reflect deeply on what kind of solidarity do you want to practice moving forward? How do you want to feel connected with youth across the world? How do you want your story to be heard? How do you want your story to uplift us across the globe? Let's just start and of a very, very important conversation on global solidarity. And that brings me to the end of our introduction to the call. Solidarity is the tenderness of people. That's a quote by Che Guevara that ties up. And yeah, I can now welcome us officially to the Global Solidarity webinar. We're going to start with our first speaker, Haruna Damba, who hails from Uganda. He's one of us in the For Youth by Youth movement. He's our recruitment specialist. And aside from that, he's also the founder of the United People's with Disabilities in Uganda. I'd like to give him a chance to take us through his thoughts and share us his voice. Over to you, Haruna.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon. Maybe it is evening or morning from where you are tuning in. So it is a privilege for me to be able to share this space and to discuss on this very critical and highly relevant topic of global solidarity. And just like Halima has said, my name is Haruna, and I am coming from Uganda. So right now, I am wearing a gray t-shirt with black buttons, anti-glare glasses, and I am of a medium to dark complexion, and also have gotten some beards on my chins. So that is a virtual description of me. It's very, very propitious to be able to share my thoughts on this very global platform. And it is a pleasure to be able to actually make the time. So my job today is very simple. I am going to share about global solidarity, its relevance, why now, and why not a time in the future. So let us dive in. To me, global solidarity is a series of interconnected efforts that would culminate in the pursuit of free and just world. And to achieve a free and just world is actually a very big, ambitious, and longer-term goal that's not going to be achieved through the might of military power, but it's going to be achieved through collective action that is rooted in justice, equity, mutual respect, and human dignity. Solidarity, or global solidarity, is not a charity. It should not be looked at as a one-way and directional flow of aid from those affluent to less privileged individuals or communities, but rather global solidarity should be looked at as a reciprocal, mutual kind of support of both partnering countries. And so those countries which also recognize that we are living in the interconnected world, where our challenges are shared across borders and not confined within those borders. And so I am gonna talk about why this global solidarity is relevant. Why now? And why not a time in the future? I started actually my global solidarity journey being part of a global leadership program. That was a network of engaged universities, Next Generation Leaders Program. And this is a global leadership program that brought together very many incredible young leaders from across the world to ponder on how we could be able to build and transform the future that we all dream of. And so I had an incredible privilege of sharing my thoughts at global platforms, including the conferences, participating in impactful initiatives such as climate change, disability employment, and community transformation, and have been able to replicate some of these activities back home here in the country. I am actually the first person to extend employment first policy and practice to the African soil that is trying to mirror what is happening in the US in terms of advocating for proactive inclusion of people with disabilities in integrated and competitive employment. I am also the founder of the Journeys to Inclusion series, which actually advocates for proactive inclusion of people with disabilities in the community. This started as a local initiative right here in the country, but now it is signaling support, moving toward this global initiative. And right now, to recognize it is imperative to have this inclusion worldwide. So throughout my work, I have come to understand that global solidarity is not just a luxury. Global solidarity is not an abstract ideal. It's not just a ceremonial phase. Global solidarity is a foundation to a sustainable and inclusive efforts. And so global solidarity calls for this interconnectedness. And when we talk about global solidarity, it involves working together, connecting between countries or communities. And even though global solidarity is actually talking about this interconnectedness, it is in no way trying to make us impose our beliefs, our culture, our system, or solutions to others, but instead, global solidarity invites us to learn from diverse perspectives, to share our own unique experience, our innovations, and our unique way of resilience. And when we do this, we become something stronger, we become something greater, we become formidable, we become resilient, and ultimately we become unchallengeable in the face of global crisis, where no single country or no single community can solve a challenge alone. So let us get an example. We all know what is happening in Ukraine. It's actually raging a war between Ukraine and Russia. But despite such a situation, Ukraine has been at the forefront of offering aid, coming to aid of other countries. For example, in 2024, through the Grain from Ukraine initiative, Ukraine offered over 500 metric tons of wheat to Syria. Well, actually, Syria was facing a civil war. Also, such other similar initiatives have been coming on. We saw the devastating flood in Pakistan and how the global community stood with them. And actually, while here in my country, we saw how the anti-LGBTQ policy was welcomed. We saw very many voices coming together to stand with these oppressed, minority LGBTQ people in this country. That is what you call global solidarity. Last week, Dr. Gardner discussed a very critical issue, and I just want to state it very quickly. Dr. Gardner said that you can't simply achieve greatness when people around you aren't willing to lift you up when you are down. And so that is the essence of global solidarity, being able and willing to uplift others and also to be uplifted when we are down. And so as I do arrive to a conclusion, I want everybody to understand that we need to move beyond transactional relationship. We need to invest more in transformational partnership. Let us commit to a world where solidarity is not occasional but institutional, where solidarity is not reactive but proactive. When we stand together, we do more than to survive, we thrive. And in that thriving, we are able to build a free, just and equitable world that we all need. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aruna, for that highly enlightening introduction. You started us off very strongly, and as Phil says in the chat, uh, uh, very thoughtful and very insightful. Thank you so much, Haruna. I'd like to invite up next Ntaranya, a very, very able speaker from the Democratic Republic of Congo. As you may all see, global solidarity shines through our panel as well. We just had Haruna from Uganda, and now we have Ntaranya. Ntaranya has a research background in rehabilitation, reconciliation, and reintegration of former child soldiers in post-conflict communities. And he also conducted research on the use of Nigerian Hollywood film industry as a tool for women, youth, and child empowerment in Nigeria. I'm going to invite Ntaranya to tell us more about himself and the important work he's doing when it comes to global solidarity. Over to you, Ntaranya.
Thank you, Halima. I think that Haruna has kicked us off in a very strong way, and I do agree that we do have to be proactive. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Teranya Singinga. I am from the Democratic Republic of Congo, currently based in Nairobi. So just to build off what Haruna said, I particularly have a politics, educational, and policy background, right? And so I'll speak mainly from that aspect on what global solidarity looks like. I think at the core of it, global solidarity requires us to be people who want to do the work and are dedicated to working, right? There's an aspect of work that is required to be in solidarity with people, and that can look different. I think most of the time when we speak of global solidarity, there's the mainstream assumption that it has to be being on the front lines, being vocal, being in the protest, supposed, because that's usually when solidarity is spoken about, whether that's Palestine or Sudan or the DRC and many other countries, right, and areas and communities. Solidarity usually speak about this, talk about this, and be at the front lines. And I position that being in the front lines actually means different things, not just front lines at the protests, but front lines in terms of uh, pushing, right, for people to learn more and to learn in more depth about the different things that happen, supporting the work that is advancing communities, and looking towards imagining a better community as a whole. I think that's the work that is required, right? And it's required on a dedicated basis, not just a one-off necessarily, right? In the context of the work I've been doing, particularly with the organization Future Africa, that work has looked at bringing people from over 25 African countries together to learn about each other on an in-depth policy way, particularly because there's narratives and conversations such as our African leaders are corrupt. But what does this actually mean at the deeper level, right? How do we understand from one country, for example, what the situation is, and how do we translate that to our context? How do we also use our experiences in another country and help perhaps innovate ideas and solutions towards challenges in another country? But we can only do this in depth when we decide to do the work. So I will pause there for now. I know we'll have more conversation. I'd like to hand over back to Halima.
Thank you so much, Taranya, for following up with also very best point. And also keeping it short and sweet for us. I'd like to invite our next panelist, our very own Kayla. She has been an alumni with us for the Next Generation Leaders program, and she is from Mexico. And from an early age, she has made her commitment to community. Kayla, please tell us more about yourself and global solidarity.
Thanks, Halima. Well, I had the honor to be part of the cohort of the Next Generation Leaders Program in 2021 and a member of the For Youth by Youth project. And today I'm truly grateful to be here with all of you guys. And honestly, I feel small in the best way because I know I'm surrounded by incredible, talented, passionate people, and I'm genuinely excited to learn from each one of you. And I hope that what I'm gonna share today can be just a small grain of sand added to the powerful way of the voice here in this space. If I've been really honest, when I first heard the term global solidarity, I didn't think much of it. It sounded like one of these concepts that you see in textbooks, but not something I thought had personal experience or practice. But then I did a research about that and I started reflecting that on the last 15 years of my life, the cause that I've been working for, the people I've met, the cross-border struggles I've been joining, and I had this moment where I were just laughing and I thought, okay, that's the name of what you do today. So what I've been done in recent years has been deeply tied to working with vulnerable groups, both between my own country and the international conflict zone. I've had the opportunity to travel and build diplomatic relationships through all of these years, to stand alongside people in moments that deep pain and to expose injustice, not just through statistics or headlines, but from a deeply human perspective. So I think that global solidarity involves this. And I graduated from the university 3 years ago, and today I work in the management area of import and export company that supports manufacturing programs in Mexico. I know that it's a very different word from activism in some ways, but I believe justice and responsibility can exist in any space, especially when we stay connected to people and purpose. So in my free time, I love participating in spaces like this. These forums, these conversations, this more than important to me. And it feels like a calling. It feels like a reminder that even as we grow professionally, we should never stop caring, questioning, and acting. Because in reality, I've been involved in creative justice across different fields and countries for years, sometimes without even realizing that it all fits under this one powerful idea of global solidarity. When I first heard the term of global solidarity, I thought that it was just another political idea, but more I learned about it, and more personally I felt. To me, if I can share something with you guys today, global solidarity means realizing that my life is connected to people that I've never met. Someone in another country trying to rebuild after a disaster, or a young student of my age who just wants to have a chance to go to school. It's the understanding that justice isn't real unless it's for everyone, not just a lucky few. So this reflection also makes me think of education. Many of us are privileged to study at university, yet millions around the world, especially girls, are marginalized. So, I don't know, not all the people have the same opportunities. And global solidarity challenges meant to not take my education for granted. It urges me to choose it, not just to build a career, but to make a difference in the world, however small. So solidarity also means listening. It means not speaking over others, but amplify voices. It means being open to learning or learning and growing. It's easy to be overwhelmed by the size of global problems, but I've learned that being overwhelmed, it's not an excuse for inaction. Also, it's important to recall compassion, even when imperfect still matters. And at the end of this, global solidarity reminds me that I'm not alone, but also reminds me that no one else should be alone either, whether it's through advocacy, kindness, education, or simply choosing empathy over indifference. So that's the kind of world that I think that I want to help build. And thanks for giving me the opportunity for share my thoughts today. I come back to you, Halima. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much, Kayla, for leaving us with a very, very important message of no one should feel alone, and that global solidarity uh, takes away loneliness, and that we are all united in this together. Up next, we have Peter. Peter is a second year history international development student at the University of Galway in Ireland, and I'm going to give him a chance to share with us his perception and views on global solidarity. Over to you, Peter.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lima. And it's great to be here talking to you all. And thank you very much to the previous speakers as well for giving their own insights and even sitting here going to their points, just finding those moments of relatability and those moments of solidarity with what they've said as well. I've been involved in youth activism for 4 years now, including at a national and international level, especially around all things to do with the climate and the environmental polycrisis at the moment. And when we're building off of these ideas of trying to find those moments of intersection, I feel very happy to be a member of our Students' Union here in the University of Galway in Ireland. And those teams of cooperation and solidarity have been part of these union groups for a very long time. And I do think it is a moment of sort of international solidarity that we can build around these groups, that you're not just looking out for your own, for just yourself, for your own selfish bits and pieces, that you're trying to learn from others and also work to make sure that a harm to one person is a harm to an entire group. And you want to be there to help and uplift people in that way. And especially when looking at the environment, I'm a big believer in sustainability, and that's been the main area I worked on. I'm from a small farm in rural Ireland. I live out in the countryside. I'm not used to living in the big city like I am now. And that divide between urban and rural seems to be a thing that I've encountered all across the world, between Africa, Latin America, and Central Asia, from the opportunities I've got talking to people from those regions. And I'm a big believer in just transition. That idea that in order for solidarity to actually be encompassed and achieved, we need to make sure that everyone's brought along together, that we don't leave behind one group while we're trying to solve a problem that affects us all, like the climate crisis. I'll keep it very short and sweet. But in terms of what other people have been saying, in terms of being on the front line and trying to make sure that you're sustainable in how you're treating yourself as well, that when you're getting part either in protests, in lobbying groups, getting involved and getting engaged, it can be very easy to burn out. And we have to treat our own mental health as a form of human sustainability, that we need to make sure that we keep going, we keep our communities going around us, and we keep that social fabric going as we move forward. So that's the main area I'm really interested in. And as an Irish person, I'm especially interested in civic engagement, in that idea of getting more young people involved in the processes that will be defining their future through legislation, especially around climate change and activism in that way. Because in Ireland, we've had many centuries of emigration out of our country. It gives us that global sort of sense of being Irish, that we have relatives all around the world. But it also means that so many people haven't got opportunities in Ireland and haven't had that opportunity to build solidarity with their own people here, and have been forced to move abroad due to either the economy or famine and other opportunities like that. So that gives us a great driving force here in Ireland. Also, as a post-colonial society, that's something that defines an awful lot of nations around the world. So all these little bits and pieces are feeding in to my interpretation of global solidarity. Thanks many folks. Really excited to talk to you in the breakout rooms.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very happy to learn that Irish people have relatives. You have relatives across the world, and for the great insights as well, and for tying it up very nicely. Thank you so much to all our panelists for sharing their first initial thoughts for this webinar series. We've heard from Kila from Mexico, Peter from Ireland, we have Haruna from Uganda, and we also have heard from Teranya from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's very, very great start for us. Now I'm going to open the floor back to the panelists, our panelists, to hear a bit more from you, bringing back our focus into uh, youth-centered or youth-led global solidarity. Thinking back to your work, the incredible things that you're doing in your attempts to achieve global solidarity, what do you think are some of the key challenges youth movements face when collaborating across borders? And maybe how can we overcome them to create a stronger, more inclusive alliances amongst youth from all over the world? It's open to whoever would like to take the first bite into the question.
Okay, sure. Should I go first?
Yes, Haruna, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that excellent question. And to me, actually, I think one of the biggest issues that are affecting youth as far as global solidarity is concerned is the prevalence of transactional partnership. So very many young leaders, perhaps unknowingly, go into this arrangement and aware that what truly make this partnership very strong and long-lasting are three quantities: being transformational, reciprocal, and mutually beneficial to all partners involved. So when one partner realizes the lack of equitable and reciprocal support, they are more likely to get disengaged. And so just as a conclusion, collaboration or global solidarity should be reciprocal. That's the only way we'll be able to make it more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Haruna. Maybe we can bounce it over to Peter to share with us some of the challenges that youth face with global solidarity, youth movements.
Thank you very much, Lima. From my perspective, I think there's a serious issue with young people, even from 18 up to 24 and beyond, being treated like children in an awful lot of discussions, that we aren't given the right respect, I think, in an awful lot of settings, that we're infantilized in some senses, our voices aren't listened to as much. In organizations I've been part of since I was 16, I have found that even when you turn 18, people still treat you as a different class of person, that they still think that you're only developing, that your voice isn't as valuable as other people's. And even as a student, that there's many opportunities I've been at where we go, thanks to the adults and the students in the room, as if we're two separate sections of society, and the fact that older people can't be students and we can't continue to be lifelong learners. So I think that's a serious issue we need to address. And the fact that, again, from Ireland's perspective, in terms of emigration, so many young people who leave the country, that it means that we need to really sort of tell people that you belong in this country, your voice is being listened, and that if we can get that across the world as well, that we can hopefully build that, that global experience of being young. I do think there's something we can build off of that, and that's my own experience in that regard.
Thank you so much, Peter. And I agree with both you and Haruna. When we can all agree that for global solidarity to happen, there has to be relationship building. And there's no relationship without trust, trusting that we are empowered, we are capable enough to be part of the decision making table, to be vulnerable and to be consistent in our work, and also to make our communication very important. I'd also like to hear from Taranya on what he thinks are some of the key challenges that youth movements face when collaborating across borders, especially reflecting on all the great work you have done across different countries. I believe you can have great insights for us, and please share.
I think the big umbrella response to it would be sustainability, right? That's the big umbrella response to it. And then under that, I'd put up perhaps 4 points. Rest and fatigue, resource and access, particularly funding and access to the necessary resources of technology and other things. I would put demand and safety, And lastly, I'd put knowledge and capacity. And just to give a one-liner for each one of these, rest and fatigue being the fact that in some of the requirements for global solidarity requires you to be in solidarity for a long duration of time. So during this march on, right, whether that's activism, whether that's building something, whether that's innovation, it requires you to put in effort. And where do you find in the time to get rest? Where do you find the time to deal with the fatigue that comes in when you're doing this work? And the responses or the results are not coming in as directly as you imagine them to be, right? With resources and funding, there's funding in terms of financing what you're doing, but also funding your own funding in terms of your own life and finances, and funding for the technology that you need to be able to connect across borders, whether that's in person or virtually like we are right now, right? Because there's some communities that could benefit from this conversation, but don't have that necessary access. Demand and safety, right? At some point, given the world we live in today, the focus on particular topics tends to be quite short-termed, right? We talk about something and the next day we're moving on to another topic, right? And on the other end, there's a lot of censorship that we continue to see in present day, whether that's from governments, whether that's from corporations and organizations, where the censorship leads to the risk and safety of different people, right? We presently see this in Kenya. We just yesterday with Boniface Mwangi being arrested and being assaulted, right? I think 21st of April. Knowledge and capacity, what do we know and how much do we know about it? And are we delving into enough knowledge to be able to engage in this, right? And we have the necessary skills to be able to do what we need to do, right? That capacity question. So I'd say in our whole, the sustainability question of being able to do the global solidarity together.
Thank you so much, Taranya, for emphasizing that global solidarity is about sharing resources, knowledge, and strategies, and it's not a top-down aid. Rather, it's more horizontal, and also emphasizing the importance of building the long-term relationships, and that it's not about one-size-fits-all solutions. I'd like to move us swiftly towards our second discussion point. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us
Halima,
on the first question.
could I just jump in real quickly? I wanted to
Yes.
check in. I think, Kayla, did you want to say something?
Yes, I only want to at some point just
Just
for
me.
Oh,
finish the
okay.
idea. So the
Sorry,
world,
Kayla, go ahead, please.
no problem, Halima. I think, well, the truth is that there are several challenges that came up when young people from different parts of the world. So try to work together. One of the biggest ones is cultural language barriers. We all come from different languages, backgrounds also with different ways of expressing ourselves, organizing movements, and even understanding power. And sometimes this difference can cause misunderstandings or even unintentional exclude people. I know that right now in this program, we try to reduce the gap, but sometimes it's something that unintentionally it can happen. So I think this is one of the points that I want to share today. Also, if I can add something else about the challenge of political pressures of repression, in some countries, young people can protest or speak out without risking their safety. That's something we always have to keep in mind when building cross-border alliances, because not everyone has the same level of freedom or protection. So I think that for this, we can start building a cultural or mutual respect and actively listening. We have to make a space for different voices and ways of working, especially those that are too often left out. That means being patient, open, and willing to learn from one another. And also, if we have the opportunity, we can also need to push more equitable sharing of resources. Whether it's funded platforms or training resources should go to those who need them most. Because solidarity must be more than symbolic, it must be structural. And also, digital tools today can help us to connect and collaborate. But we must also think about safety, accessibility, and inclusivity in everything we do. We should support encrypted communications, maybe for activists in high-risk zones, and always ask, is this a space truly open for everyone, and try to protect these people that hide the voices in every community. Thank you, Halima, for giving me the opportunity for sharing these final thoughts, and we can move on in the next question.
Thank you so much, Kila. You actually brought up a very, very crucial aspect of safety, and you also gave us a very practicable solution that we can all take up. That we need to make global solidarity structured. We need to consistently keep having these conversations, as Interanya also said, and not having it remain as only notes, that we actually have action behind our conversations. That brings us on to our next and final question in this segment. I'd like to prompt you to recall a moment when you experienced genuine solidarity from someone or a movement beyond your own community or country, and what made that support meaningful, and how did it shape your approach to activism? This is to take you back to your work, and if you felt that somebody across the globe, a movement across the globe, resonated with your work, with your ethics, with your values, with your priorities, and you felt truly in solidarity. I'd like to request for Peter to start us off with answering this question. Peter, if you'd like to go.
So sorry about that, Halima. Sorry, I just couldn't hear over the noise there. Sorry, I just missed you there. Undoubtedly, I'd say the moment that I had of pure solidarity with people I had only just met was 2 years ago in Paris at the 13th UNESCO Youth Forum that they held there. And it was an incredible opportunity because I hadn't left Ireland much before that point. I didn't have many intercultural encounters up to at that stage. And when I got there, I started to talk to people, a number of people from Ghana, from Nigeria, and from a variety of places in West Africa. And I talked to people who also came from rural backgrounds, like myself, who also lived on farms, had experience of that sense of community, that small sense of community in these areas that have been torn apart, either through economics or through war over years, and the similar experiences that I had in my own town from mass immigration from the towns becoming desolate. And I realized that there's something so special to the culture that we hold around farming. And that we aren't in it just for the money, that there's something that you're doing it because your people have done it beforehand. And all these things came together so nicely in this little tapestry that we're able to move forward to talk about the need for just transition for farmers. That as we're moving from more traditional techniques to more modern organization and sort of future-proofing farming, that I found that moment of solidarity there, undoubtedly. That people that I had only met for a few days, that sense of value that we hold for our animals, for our livestock, and that history that we tell. In Ireland, we have a great tradition of oral stories, of telling stories tradition. But they also had, these gentlemen also had it as well. So I had those moments of intercultural encounter and real moment of solidarity that lined up exactly with my experience as a sustainability and environmental activist. So that was a moment that I felt that no borders could stop the sense of community and culture.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's so wonderful and heartwarming to hear that you can have such a great connection with people you had time together and shared time with for 2 days, and also learning about more of your work with rural youth, and that you're such a fierce advocate, and we love that. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I'd like to jump over next to Interanya, and then we hear from Kayla and finish off with Haruna. Interanya, please share with us your thoughts.
I think the most recent would be I'd have to speak about the Democratic Republic of Congo and the current situation in Eastern DRC, right? For those who are not aware, there's been a conflict that's been going, a war that's been going for the past 30 years, but which has escalated quite heavily within the past, let's say, 6 months. And during this time, I think as it began to escalate and draw more attention, to me, what was very fascinating was to see solidarity in the form of platforms being provided for people to voice out what was happening in Congo, whether that was through people like Dubito Kapong, who provided Migrant Roots Media, or Cheche Bookstore in Nairobi, which organized several panels to talk about DRC. I think making available their resources to be able to propel other work and advance a conversation and action towards something. Equally, the Republic, and I think even within Future Africa where I work, there were certain members who took the conversation about DRC into their own community communities and worked quite actively to help others learn about it and see why it's important for them to get engaged and how it affects them, right? And so I think for me, that effort of solidarity where you don't make the person do the work, but you come to support them by showing them that there's a platform that they can do the work with you collaboratively was quite keen for me.
Thank you so much, Mr. for those insights. I love that you emphasize the essence of support and uplifting one another without necessarily impeding our potential to grow and find our arts. I'd like to hear also thoughts from Kila about moments you felt global solidarity.
Thanks, Halima. I want to share a moment that I shaped how I see global solidarity, not just an abstract idea, but as something deeply human and personal. In the past, I'd had the privilege to making friends from different countries and cultures. So then I began to understand that while we all face challenges and people problems um, faced in other parts of the world can be very different and sometimes far more intense. One of the most powerful lessons that I learned was from listening to friends who had been refugees, people who had to leave everything behind because of war. Hearing these histories opened my eyes to the reality of displacement, the fear, the uncertainty, the deep loss of they carried, not just of homes, but of identities, safety, and belonging. It moved me deeply, and it made me realize that solidarity isn't just about empathy. It's it's about action. That experience motivated me to get involved in efforts to help refugees and displaced people, also in my country, and I started advocating for policies and programs that will allow my country to be a place of welcome and safety for all of these displaced people. Because I believe that if we have the ability to offer support, we also have the responsibility to doing something. That support I received just through conversations, through honest history shared across borders was incredibly meaningful. It reminds me that solidarity isn't limited by geography. It's built through connection, respect, and the willingness to stand up for one another, even when we come from different worlds. And what made this experience even more meaningful was how personal it became. When you have friends you truly care about that, you no longer see their struggles as distant issues. You begin to feel injustice as if it were happening to you. And that feeling pushes you to act and to do it something, not out of obligation, but out of compassion and solidarity. Because of that connection, and also because many other choose to care, you decided this. Where we were able to do something truly meaningful. After years of silence, we helped reestablish diplomatic and humanitarian ties between my country and another. That opened the door for thousands of displacement people to continue their migration processes, many of who have been waiting for over 5 years to leave regions affected by conflict. So through collaboration between civil society, international human rights organizations, and people like us who simply refused to look away, we helped reunite families and gave people a chance to live, to move forward, and to dream again. So that's what global solidarity looks like. If I can give a good example of this, I want to share with you guys today this. And I only want to recall that not just empathy, but action, not just caring, but do it something with care. And truly believe that when we let love, friendship, and justice guide us, even the smallest connection can lead the lasting change. Thank you, Halima.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm avoiding an echo. Thank you so much, Kayla, for that. and you left us with a very strong point as well on how we can continue look at global solidarity. Last but not least, Haruna to share with us a moment where he felt global solidarity.
Thank you very much, Halima, for that excellent question. And actually, I think it comes deep from your heart, so you care most about it. And to quickly answer your question, actually, throughout my journey as a disability activist, I have had the pleasure of working with some really inspiring people, including international collaborators who have not only supported our work, but have also taken a step further to learn from our lived experience and local innovations. And so what made that collaboration or solidarity truly meaningful and impactful is that it was a kind of a reciprocal nature. It wasn't one party receiving, it was all of us trying to benefit. We were able to co-create solutions together. And I think in our last webinar series, Cameroon talked about co-creation when he emphasized a point that co-creation is better than consultation. And with this, co-creation, it helps us to recognize what each and every party brings on the table and being able to build together from a point of equity and trust. And so this has truly changed my approach towards the global activism. I think out partnerships that are truly grounded in mutuality, where every individual involved has a voice, is an agent, and actually that person has a stake in the outcome of what the collaborative goals are. So thank you very much for that excellent question.
Thank you, Haruna, for the excellent answer as well. And to all the panelists for sharing their thoughts with us in the introduction and also while answering these key questions. I'd like to pass it back to Cameron so that we may go ahead and get into the breakout rooms where we'll get a chance to speak even more with our panelists and continue having consistent communication about global solidarity and continuing to build youth-led global solidarity and togetherness. Over to you, Cameron.
Thank you so much, Halima, and thanks so much to the panelists for sharing your insights with us. I think I speak for people on the call here where I think we've learned a lot, just as we did last week. I think what's resonating with me is what Kayla, you said, make a difference no matter how small. And I think that these webinars start those conversation. We're going to move each of you into a breakout room now. So you should see in the next couple of minutes that notification pop up on your screen that you'll be assigned to a breakout room. Each of our panelists will be in a room separate to each other, and they're there to answer your questions, to have discussion, to continue this conversation. You may not necessarily get into the room with the panelists that maybe you wanted to ask questions to, so you can also share questions with us later on in the chat, and we can try and follow up. We're kind of moving people randomly into breakout rooms because there's a lot of people on the call, and we want to make sure that we kind of have a space for everyone to ask questions to at least one of the panelists. We're going to do that until about 26 minutes past 10, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little brief kind of wrap up, and we'll talk again about the impact survey like we did last week, just to get your feedback on this session. So Caitlin is supporting us on generating the breakout rooms. You should see that this has asked you to join a room right now. If that is the case, please click join. If you require translation or interpretive services, please come back to the main room where Haruna and Caitlin will be here to continue the conversation with you as well.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Halima, I think you have to put your other device into the breakout room.
I can move.
Okay.
Sorry, which room is that?
Halima, can you hear us?
I've left the meeting on the other device, so it should be okay now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, and as a co-host, you should be able to go into any of the rooms that you want to pop into.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe we can just give it a minute, Haruna, to see if other people want to come back to the main room. But feel free to pose the questions that you all had discussed. Yeah, when you're ready. I think we have about we have like 14 people in this room. And if anyone needs help getting into their breakout room, feel free to write us a message in the chat. I think we should be pretty settled here in the main room. Halima and Haruna, if you all want to kick us off with the discussion.
Haruna, this is your breakout room. I'd like to invite questions to you about the kind of work you do and more conversation about global solidarity. So I'll give Haruna a chance first to just open it up, remind our participants about the work he does, and then Haruna you can open the floor to questions.
Hello everyone on this call. But Caitlin, I think my chat window is disabled. I can't post anything in the chat. But then I am gonna go ahead and speak very briefly about my work I do. And so my name again is Haruna. I am a disability activist and have a bachelor's degree in laboratory medicine. I am a disabled scientist and I do work with a government hospital, Center 3, in charge of the laboratory. So I see very many patients being a government hospital, about 200 patients daily. I do my diagnosis and their prognosis as well. And then I am a very passionate disability advocate. I love to see very many people with disability in such very esteemed positions. I want to see people serving as doctors, as pharmacists, as teachers, as engineers, and these are the individuals who have the right qualification to actually be able to serve in those positions. Many people really got surprised to see that a deaf individual like myself can be a doctor, can work in the hospital. And so I just want to kind of come on and dismantle this negative or disabling stereotypes. People actually think people with disabilities can't do anything, but we have the capability to achieve everything in life that we desire. And so my principal right here in my disability advocacy work is that true community inclusion would only be achieved when everyone is able to work, when everyone is able to contribute. And so when individuals are denied an opportunity to work or contribute, their dreams, their self-esteem evaporates. And so actually they come to understand that, or they live their whole life thinking they can't be productive. And so I've been in this disability work for about 4 years now, trying to advocate for proactive inclusion of people with disabilities in the workplace. My work actually centers around competitive, integrated employment because I know in order to change systems, we need to have people with disabilities into those systems. Whether it is transforming our health care, we need to have people with disabilities working in the health care because they are the very people who understand those issues, who will be able to squarely pontificate on those gaps and kind of being forced to improvise, to kind of come up with innovative solutions to challenge those challenges or stereotypes. And so what actually I've been able to understand throughout my work as a disability advocate is that quite now a number of people are very reactive when it comes to disability inclusion. I have seen many people right here who have actually built malls, those public buildings, and they are very, very sure those buildings is going to be accessible by all people, but they haven't put it into consideration to construct ramps or have lifts in those buildings. But when you talk to them, they can assure you, I am gonna adjust. I will be able to put ramps when someone comes to me with concerns, and so that they can appear somewhat inclusive because of their being reactive. But that's not equitable. In that disability is considered afterthought and not as a foundation. So what we truly need is that people try to take disability inclusion from initially their planning phases. When we have a Zoom meeting like this, do not wait for people to raise concern about having an interpreter before you could put that into consideration. We need you to be able to properly budget for that because we have people of different abilities. Like when I started my session, I had to virtually introduce myself. I understand we have some visually impaired colleagues attending this session. We also have to be more accommodating to them. Those are the people who can't see, but they hear. And you have to describe yourself to them to kind of get that picture of who is trying to communicate to them. What are you wearing? How can you describe yourself? So all of those kind of simple thing can make us truly accommodating and inclusive. And I think I am gonna end on that note unless you have any questions for me to answer.
Thank you, Haruna. Anybody would like to ask a question to Haruna towards anything he has shared about his story, global solidarity, about the space for people with disabilities, and anything that you're curious to know more about? This is a very good chance to have a one-on-one with him.
I just noted the chat should be working, Haruna. Maybe it was weird because of the breakout rooms, but yeah, people can feel free to add any thoughts or questions into the chat or unmute themselves.
Thank you, Caitlin. I see Ayanda, John, Deborah, Phil, Mlanda. Anything you'd like to know from Aruna? Any questions about his insights today?
Hey, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Phil.
Oh, okay. No, no specific questions, but yeah, I mean, as always, like I really enjoyed listening to Arun. I thought what you said was uh very thoughtful, like especially in terms of like, the interconnectedness that we have as leaders, how we have to remain conscious. Yeah, yeah, overall, I also think this is a really great theme. So I appreciate you taking time to share with us.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone else would like to add something or share their own thoughts about global solidarity? And maybe you've had it for the first time as you are preparing to join this call. What did you think global solidarity was? And also maybe prompting Haruna in the meantime to share with us a bit more on um, when we're trying to have youth movements across borders, find like common ways of working together. What if priorities are different? How can they navigate that in order to achieve, alignment?
Okay, should I come in to answer or get a brief about Johnny's query in the chat?
Oh, sorry. I'm
So
just
John
seeing
is
John's
actually
chat.
asked.
How shall we deal with contradicting solidarities? Oh, yes. I think you can answer them both.
So why should I go over that question, Halim?
Yes, Haruna, please go ahead and answer John's question.
Okay, honestly, I think these are very, very conflicting questions, and I've personally encountered them. We have people having solidarity on different things, but a little contradicted also what you believe in. And just letting me get you a perfect example is the war, especially between Palestine and Israel, which have gotten a lot of contracting views. People are sidelining with Palestine, others are saying Israel is right. But in all of that case, I think what's gonna help us to build a global solidarity is actually having something to offer in exchange to whatever we truly believe in. Like, for example, if we could invite Israel on a negotiation table, we literally have to offer something in return. Like, what are you willing to offer in exchange to peace? Many times, most people just come up with a simple paper and they think by signing, a peace agreement will help pacify those conditions. But to me personally, I think that is not a very tangible solution. You are trying to get someone laid down the arms. So we are coming to the negotiation table. We have to be offering something in return. Like, what are we willing to offer in exchange to the peace? That Israel is trying. What that we are trying to tell Israel, to lay down the arms. And those are the simple issues that needed to take into account. Those people agitating towards something. We have to first look into them and then come into the discussion table with something that we are willing to offer in exchange to those that we demand from them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Haruna, for that great answer. Anybody else? We have about 2 minutes before we get back into the main room. Anyone else would like to share their thoughts on global solidarity? Any question they may have for Haruna? And we can also just share as well what any moments that we feel that there has been global solidarity in the recent times before we close. Other than that, Haruna, you have been a very amazing panelist. I'm going to give you shout outs for sharing in depth and giving us insights into your world and how you experience things from your perspective. It's been a great honor to listen to you during this time. Yeah, still there's an opportunity for people to ask questions. So just as we're still here, so currently in our times, youth are at the forefront of many of the global issues, and we can be termed as the first responders. I don't know if we can react with thumbs up in the chat if we agree, and maybe if we can share insights into our countries if we've seen this happen. In Kenya, we've seen a lot of youth taking up all the spaces when it comes to responding and reacting and taking charge of conversations, and also putting the governments, the legal makers into under scrutiny. So this is also a show of global solidarity as we see youth across the globe come together. Universities are being grounds for proactiveness and are being grounds for advocacy, and this is really nice to see happen. So yeah, I think we should continue having these conversations. And just to echo Caitlin, social media helps with this, and I agree totally that we are more connected than ever, and it's up to us to continue forging relationships and gaining our momentum with our numbers, as Laureen says a lot of the times, fist unfurled, like making sure that we are very serious and committed as youth across the world. And if each of us makes a small effort, then it will all add up into great action. Yeah. Haruna, can you maybe leave us with a quote that we can reflect on? Or anyone with a quote that they can share in the chats? Yeah, no pressure. Sorry, I put you on the spot there. Anybody with a quote that they would like to share with us?
Caitlin, can you let me know if all the breakout rooms are back?
I think people are coming in. Just give it a minute. Everyone should now be back. Yep. And Halima was just leaving our breakout room with a prompt for an inspiring quote. So I don't know if you had one in your back pocket, Cameron.
God, in my back pocket. Trying to think of a good quote. Now I do feel on the spot. To be honest, the thing that just keeps floating around my head is that comment I made earlier of make a difference no matter how small. I think quite often, particularly in youth spaces, we think that we have to do really big actions or really big things in order to change the world. But I think those of us who've been involved in For Youth by Youth to now, and those that are starting on their journeys, hopefully you'll reach the same point that we have, which is that all actions, no matter how big, have an impact, and that this movement is going to be built and sustained on small actions. And so, yeah, make a difference no matter how small. So I'm going to
Thanks,
credit
Cameron.
Kayla with that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cameron. Solidarity is what will connect us beyond cause and country, and I'm so glad that we had to share this time and space together to speak more on it.
And it's always a pleasure to share this space with you, Halima. And I thank you and the panelists, your excellent facilitation skills, your insights, and of course the panelists' insights as well. Etrina, Kayla, Peter, and Haruna. This webinar series wouldn't have been possible without all five of you. So I truly do appreciate that. Folks, as was last week, we have a short task for participants to also complete now. You will see that in the chat, I've just put in a link to our feedback form on this particular session. And I'm just sharing on the screen here a QR code for you to scan to complete this feedback form for us. We'd ask that you take the time to do it. I know that people get very burnt out and fatigued over surveys, but this truly does help us to understand how to improve and to create more engaging spaces like this webinar space for you and for others in our community. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to fill it in. It does matter to us, and it gives us a good sense of what's working, what we can change, and also gives the panelists a sense of how their insights have helped shaped your understanding of global solidarity, as is the case today. So please do take the time to fill this in. I'll keep this up on the screen for the next couple of minutes so that you can scan it. As I said, the link is in the chat as well for anyone that needs to click from there. And all that's left for me is to thank you for coming and for showing up, engaging, participating, asking questions, and putting comments in the chat. We will be back next week at the same time on Zoom again for the third session of our 6-week webinar series, where next week we will have a session on participatory action research and how lived experience and the inclusion of lived experience in research can really shape our worlds through the lens, as always, of global solidarity and conscious leadership. So please complete the survey. Thank you, Halima. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the Panari and Tufts and Talwares Network teams. As always, the interpreters, both Spanish translation and ASL interpreters, and for yourselves for showing up. We really do appreciate it.